Percent composition is how we show how much of a substance is composed of one element. So when we do percent compositions, you must have the chemical formula. So that's like the number one mistake students make, is that they're not looking at the chemical formula. We need it because we need to know how many atoms of each type of element make up the compound. To find the percent composition, you would take the mass of the element in the compound, divide it by the total mass of the compound, and then multiply by 100. And that will give you the percent of the compound. Now for significant figures, you need 2 decimal places in your answers. And that's because we give our masses, or the periodic table gives the masses to 2 decimal places for the most part. So we're going to work out 3 examples. Okay, the first example here, copper 1 sulfide. Notice that this is the name, and before we can do any math, we need the formula. So we're going to cross our charges. So we look on the periodic table, and copper is Cu. It's a transition metal because it falls between groups 3 through 12. So this Roman numeral is the charge on the copper. So this copper has a charge of 1. And then IDE tells me that this is an element, and so sulfide is sulfur on the periodic table. The charge of sulfur is in group 16, so it's -2. And then we cross those numbers down to the bottom, and we get Cu2S. So we have 2 coppers and 1 sulfur atom that makes up copper 1 sulfide. The question is asking us to find the percent of copper. So we're going to take the mass of copper in the compound. Notice that there are 2 coppers. So we're going to say 2 times, and then look on the periodic table for the mass of copper. And it is 63.55. And then we're going to divide it by the mass of the whole compound itself. So we're going to say 2 coppers plus we have that 1 sulfur. So we're going to add 32.07. And then we're going to multiply it by 100. So when you type this into the calculator, you want to use those parentheses so that it makes sure that it adds the numbers on the bottom, or the denominator, before it divides by the top there. So we get an answer of 79.85% copper. So this compound is 79.85% copper, which means the remaining percent would be the sulfur. Let's look at another example. Find the percent of sulfate in silver sulfate. So again, we need that formula so we know how much of each atom we have. Silver is Ag. Even though it's a transition metal, it's one of the 2 that we know has a charge of +1. Remember, zinc has a charge of +2. That's the other one we know. Sulfate ends in ATE, so that's a polyatomic. So we're going to look on page 7 of our reference tables, and we notice that sulfate is SO4, 2-. And then we're going to cross the charges to the outside of that parentheses. And we have Ag2SO4. I don't have parentheses around the SO4 anymore because I only have 1 of them. So to find the percent of sulfate, remember ATE, that's the SO4 part, we're going to put the mass of sulfur plus the mass of 4 oxygens on the top. We're going to divide that by the mass of 2 silvers plus the sulfur plus the 4 oxygens. So notice that what you have on top, yes, it is repeated on the bottom because we want to know what the total is for the bottom. And on the top, we're just doing the specific part of the formula. All right, and then multiply it by 100 to get that percentage, and it is 30.81%. So roughly the other 70% of the mass is based on the silver atoms. And if you look at the mass of silver, it's much higher than the mass of oxygen and sulfur. So it does kind of make sense mathematically. All right, one more time.